Greetings everyone, I am Iris V. Is Retem City actually a city? The fact that Retem City is called a city either suggests one of two things. It is the remnants of a city, or there is more to the city that we can't see. I have three theories I'd like to talk about today. Number one, and this is the most lazy, Retem City and by contrast all zones are larger canonically versus what we can see in game. Now this is a fairly hard one to debunk, purely because there are a lot of elements in the game that suggest that this is the case. First, there are 50 arcs above ground and only 9 houses. Considering that Nadara takes one house for herself and lives with no one else, which she seems to live on her own, that means there are 8 houses for 50 Arcs members. And keep in mind that 6 of them are shopfront. That's not a lot of room for 50 people. And I'd assume that Arcs would have quarters. Maybe a couple of the buildings are hotels, but we do not know on that ground. Next up, we have the graveyard. In the Retem graveyard, there are 53 graves that each at least have 10 names on them. But we do know that there are more dead members in that graveyard than what is displayed. And even if I use the highest estimate for the amount of names on the list, appears to be about 20, if I'm being generous, the amount of names in the graveyard, ignoring the fact that they all clearly are the same sprite, is still a tenth of the amount that Nadara said were buried in the graveyard. And I use buried loosely there because mostly their names have just been recorded there. Unless there is some more lore there that I am unaware of, this suggests that the graveyard could be a lot bigger than it actually is in the game. And my last piece of evidence is that it would be unrealistic to render the entirety of a huge city in Pso2 when there are PCs and Xboxes that can handle the game. Also, a city has at least 1,500 members, according to a quick Google search, and this is a low estimate, so 1,500 characters walking around Retem doesn't seem realistic or feasible for the lower end systems to be able to run the game. Now onto my next theory. Retem City used to be larger. Now there's very little evidence of Retem City having out of districts that have been destroyed. We can actually chop that up to a number of things. First thing is that Retem City appears to be the shell of a crashed ship or of a fallen skyscraper. While the first is more likely, if it's the shell of a fallen skyscraper, this changes the perspective of things as the location of Retem City would actually be a little different. It would be in the dunes of Central Alio. And keep in mind the fact that Central Alio is a dune zone because this will become important in the future. As I want to go into the fact that there are 2 key locations in Retem that may as well be part of the city. The Retem City Graveyard and Retem Alnorth. We do know that before Nadara was leader of her people, that the Retem Alnorth was used and maintained. And the fact that it was abandoned because Nadara's voice appeared to do nothing hints that it may be possible that they abandoned it and other structures that became unusable or undefendable, period. Now, comparing Pso2 to the real world might be jank, and it might be unfeasible. But in the real world at least, civilization is built near water. Retem City is not that close to any source of water. Sure, there is ocean on 2 sides of the Retem area. The quickest source of fresh water is an oasis, and this would be another key location that Arcs would want to be around because it is a source of water. And given that there are human in the populations of Arcs defenders, I think this is important as humans would need water. And if you think that the environment can't completely hide a city, keep in mind that it would be technically possible for the sands and dunes to erode the city, and the decline may have started as early as 200 years ago at that point in time, as we do know that that's when Retem started attacking, and that's the time frame we're working with where 10,000 Arcs defenders died. And also, of course, there's an army of dolls also speeding up the overwriting process, so it is completely viable that there is a completely destroyed city under the sand right now. And my last theory for this video, Retem City is 97% underground. This one's a bit more outlandish, but there is some merit to it. The first bit of proof is there is a structure in the Retem City that kind of looks like an elevator. This could hint that there is a civilian population under the city. And again, I will harp on the lack of living quarters above ground that we see as well on this, because both of these factors together, the appearance of something that looks like an elevator and the lack of housing structures for civilians, seems to be very, very much hinting at the fact that there could be more underground. But the main thing supporting this theory is what base game says about NGS. Because in base game, we are on a ship. That ship is a colony ship. We are the colony defenders. And well, there is an entire civilization of civilians on that ship with you. But we don't see much civilians in NGS. Maybe we can see some in Alio City. However, with the state of Retem, either there are no civilians left and they're all dead, or they're still being protected underground. It is hard to say, especially with a sand-burying worm that can probably hit them anyway, so it wouldn't even be that safe. However, there would be more room, and it would allow the devs of the game to not have to develop an entire city. And maybe it's a possibility with Alio City as well. There are more people there, we can't see them. So, is Retem City a city? Well, if 2 of my 3 theories are correct, yes, Retem City is a city. However, if my second theory is correct and Retem City just plain out has been destroyed, then Retem City is no longer a city and is just holding on to the name because that's what it's known as. The name is no longer consistent with how many people live there. But personally, I kinda doubt that there's only 50 Arts Defenders left when over a period of 200 years, 10,000 died. I mean, it's possible, but I find it highly unlikely. Keep in mind, there is a little bit more than 50 Arcs Defenders there. Either way, I've been IRSV, I hope you enjoyed my video, and I will see you next time.